Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and today we'll be discussing the top 13 dangerous and mystical monsters of the Witcher universe. Whether it be the Netflix show or the Witcher games, the monsters of Geralt of Rivia's medieval fantasy world is bound to make him look better than he already is. The monsters are not only bloodthirsty and vicious, but some of them are also simply cursed and innocent individuals who deserve better. There are a plethora of monsters from various mythologies and mystical backgrounds, while some are simply horrific and gruesome. From the Djinn to Macbeth's three witches, or the Weird Sisters, The Witcher has something for everyone.
She's changed for the worse.
Why'd she attack you?
She's no longer the girl you once knew. Wrath consumes her.
If that doesn't satisfy you, there are various mutated forms and amalgamations of Dragonoid being with other fierce animals. In this video, we will take a look at some of the fiercest and most dangerous monsters of the Witcher's world of horror and fantasy. So, grab your silver swords and gather your courage, because this one will bewitch you into rewatching the series, or playing the game, or at least will thrill you to your core. Before we go into today's analysis, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small step for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, on with the video.
Only a Djinn can remove another Djinn's spell. Remove this one and you'll be free.
Number 1. Djinn. The Djinn is an elemental genie of air, and is a powerful air spirit. It's nothing more than the condensation of the power of air that possesses consciousness, sentience, and character.
A Djinn.
A what?
I'm looking for a Djinn.
For a Djinn? Like a genie?
As is widely believed, the Djinn can create any wish of a person, but they are incredibly begrudging to do so. Djinn can be captured, tamed, and used by powerful magicians. For instance, in the short story written by Andrzej Sapkowski, we read about the magician Jeffrey Monk captured several of these mystical creatures and used them for his own selfish reasons and personal gain.
Wow, what is that?
The wizard's seal.
However, Djinn are extremely powerful beings, and in order to tame them, one must first weaken them, which in itself is a stupendous feat to attain. This is because Djinn are exceptionally good and adept at spells that take years of practice to master. Since they are a being and a spirit of air, they can summon hurricanes and powerful storms at their will for their benefit. The Djinn created by Andrzej Sapkowski essentially remain similar to those we have read about and watched in fairy tales like Arabian Nights. They must grant 3 wishes of their master, following which they are free once again.
True transformation is painful.
Release the Djinn! I'll give you my last wish!
If a player must face a Djinn, the most significant combat tactic is constantly being on the move and working quickly. Demetrium bombs work wonders against Djinn, because they help to close the distance without getting burned or frozen. However, the fact that Djinn can teleport short distances makes them a particularly formidable foe. Of course, we must not also forget about those other powers that they possess.
Any last words?
A trap. Fight.
You had your chance.
Number 2. The Wild Hunt.
Long the terrors, yet the village froze like in the heart of winter. If you'd have heard the cries, sir, if you'd have heard how a man can scream.
The Wild Hunt is believed to be a group of spectral beings who are led by a king, and locals believe that they are the harbingers of misfortune and death. They are the prime antagonists of the game The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. They wear rusty remnants of armor and ride bony and skeletal horses and yield jagged swords. These specters are also considered to be the reason behind inexplicable disappearances and reappearances of men and women who suffer from time dilation. These people strangely return to their kins after decades, but surprisingly, without having aged even a day. All things said, the Wild Hunts are not entirely specters, but rather they're a cavalry of elves, led by Eredin Break Glass. If we are to believe the traditions and eyewitnesses, the Wild Hunt abducts innocent people, forces them to join its ranks, for galloping across the skies. Their hunt reaches its epitome during wars, because they could find more men and women who are vulnerable and alone.
Ciri, no!
Not surprisingly, no mention of the elven wild hunt is witnessed in the elven culture or mythology, and they choose to remain silent on the subject.
Our sins, and let us not forget the terrors, the scourges from beyond our world. The wild hunt rides the sky with every full moon.
Two among the many notable victims of the wild hunt are sorceress Yennefer of Vennerberg and witcher Geralt of Rivia. People who have studied the wild hunt have noted the mysterious and mystical powers that help the group in its adventures. The number of theories behind the wild hunt is at times without number, but one thing for sure is that they abduct people for their ordeals and unknown objectives. Some of them manage to find freedom, while others, let's just say, they don't see a very happy ending. Number 3. Topplers. Topplers are basically expert shapeshifters who can take the form of any humanoid or beast that they please, given that the weight of the creature is equivalent to theirs. They were native to Novigrad, but left for the city after finding greater possibilities for survival. Unlike other shapeshifters, their transformation cannot be broken by just any spell or curse, because when Topplers transform, they go through entirely authentic metamorphosis. Naturally, no Witcher medallions or protective amulets and enchantments can detect their presence. Furthermore, they achieve this feat without having any prior knowledge and do it entirely based on their instincts. Furthermore, they radiate the same aura, skills, mindset, personality, and traits of the being that they are shapeshifting into. Their expert shapeshifting abilities are coupled with their incredible cunning and intellect. However, they are bound by nature to avoid shedding blood, and it also made them timid and generous souls.
You're different to other Topplers. You're not good-natured or helpful, are you?
In their original form, they look like hideous beasts with bald heads, long noses, small height, yellow eyes, and elongated tongues. However, they have certain limitations to their shapeshifting capabilities. For example, they fail to shapeshift if they touch anything made of silver, and any article, like swords or jewelry, would transform into a piece of flesh if that item lost contact with the Toppler. Not surprisingly, humans used to fear these generous beings because of their abilities, but this fear is usually unjustified. However, things changed later, and humans started to hunt these creatures like rabid dogs. To avoid persecution, they started living in disguise as humans in a society. But even then, their lives weren't easy. If captured, some maniacal priests would bake them in clay vessels until the beings would explode. Number 4. Heim. Heim is a spectral being that appeared in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. According to the experts who penned Behind the Great Veil, these creatures are essentially demons who are not easy to tame or exorcise. They can be found in various realms and spheres, including the living world and Gontarodim's dark plane. The Heim doesn't attack its victims outright and doesn't use force on them. Instead, it feeds on its victims' guilt and torments them to the point of no return, and the victim either loses their sanity or dies. The Heim mostly attacks innocent and vulnerable entities, like children, travelers, and so on. These people tend to walk in the dark and deep woods. However, the demons latch on to people who have committed unspeakable crimes, and to the innocents, they remain invisible. When they reveal themselves to their victims, they appear like tall, shadow-like silhouettes with long, razor-sharp claws. But Heim doesn't sink its claws into its victims. Rather, it sucks the strength indirectly by giving the victim psychological suffering. The Heim forces and manipulates its victims to commit violence and aggression, even self-harm. It feeds on the victim's fears and shows them absolutely hideous visions to drive them to insanity and ultimately to commit suicide. Number 5. Dragon. Few ancient powers lay deep within the darkness of the eternal abyss. They are older than men and elves, and patiently wait for the time that is known only to them. A time when they would come to light and show the world just who they truly are. One such being is the dragon. Dragon is an underwater monster that waits at the lake's bottom for a desired configuration of stars so that it could come to the surface to unleash its wrath upon people. It is worshipped by a few people, and the Votanoi are the fish people living in the Great Sea. However, it is uncertain when the stars would align, according to its whims, so it spends its time terrorizing those who live underwater and close to the lake's shores. His horns frame his head like a halo that would remind us of the ancient demons. His worshippers give great value to precious stones like turquoise. It's essentially a deity or demigod of sorts, and naturally it is extremely huge and towers over its worshippers, including the human worshippers. His limbs are like fins, which prove that he can swim better than walking on land. He only appears when summoned through a ritual, and he doesn't rely on his sense of sight once on land, because he mostly spends his time in places where the sun doesn't shine. When he does arrive on land, a thick fog wraps the area so that the sun or the wind wouldn't reach him. It then gets blanketed by water, from which comes rotten seaweed and other powerful wafts of slime. Well, after that arrives the mighty and magnificent Dragon. Dagon is also a short story written by the legendary horror writer H.P. Lovecraft. The god in The Witcher is a direct reference to the Cthulhu mythology that Lovecraft created. The two pieces of art share several characteristics, especially with respect to those known as the Deep Ones. Season 1 of the Netflix series The Witcher gives us a look at a beautiful golden dragon. However, we are yet to see Geralt fight one. Instead, Geralt helps the dragon protect some dragon eggs. Number 6. Griffon. Also called Griffon with an O, the creature has the tail, legs, and body of a giant cat, as well as the talons, wings, and head of an eagle. It preys on large animals like horses, cattle, etc. And because it's an extremely territorial beast, it fiercely protects its hunting grounds. These sadistic beasts are famous for playing with their prey before eating them alive, one piece at a time. They live in highlands and caves situated in the mountains, where they build a nest that's practically unreachable. The first became known to man when they started attacking the early colonizers, settlers, and merchants. The trade routes fell into the hunting territory of the Griffons, and therefore clashes were imminent and unavoidable. They are extremely tough and formidable beasts who should not be taken lightly, and whose strength ought not to be underestimated. Their ability to fly makes them even deadlier than they already are, but one can use horses to catch up to them. During a combat, they may fly away from an attacker or swoop down swiftly on their targets, often knocking the target down before ripping them into shreds using their sharp claws and powerful beak. Their strong wings can often land a damaging blow that cannot be blocked, while their talons are powerful enough to land massive strikes, take away a large chunk of your health with just a single blow. The hybrid creature arrived during the time of conjunction, but some researchers believe that it is an ancient and native species that has existed since time immemorial. The more ferocious and loathed variants of the griffins are the royal griffins and the arch griffins. These creatures mate for life and save their partners in times of danger or die trying. Naturally, they are seen as the embodiment of extreme loyalty and courage. Some even consider them the embodiment of the fighting spirit. They locate their victims using their heightened sense of smell. Once that's done, they come swooping down on their target like an eagle. Usually, this is enough to kill the target, but if the target still remains alive, they charge at them with their talons, beak, and wings. Number 7. Leshi. A Leshi, also called a Leshen, is a forest monster that lives to kill and kills to live. These ancient and mighty spirits of the forest possess a deer skull on their head, and their entire body is made up of tree branches. Interestingly enough, it can transform into crows to avoid attack, and can summon forest denizens like wolves and tree branches or roots to its aid. In Monster Hunter World, Geralt gets transported into a different realm or world, where he learns that a powerful Leshen is trying to take control of a forest infested with monsters. The other monster hunters secure the area for Geralt and keep the deadly creatures at bay, while Geralt is tasked with finding the Leshen and slaying it. Since time immemorial, Humans have been fascinated with the wilderness of the woods and the creatures that it offers. These range from ferocious and hostile to friendly and harmless. But as humans started to live deeper and deeper into the woods, their respect for the forest creatures and the secrets that the woods held began to diminish. They started to cut down the trees for timber, and they also began building homes of stones. These activities were seen as pestilence, and the unknown beings of the forests became more ferocious and deadly than they already were. At the heart of the woods resides the Leshen, presumed to be nature's way of protecting flora and fauna from the threat that was humanity. Humans did start to expand their control over the deeper portions of the forest, but the forest would fight back through the Leshen, a being who is primarily immune to most human weapons and even steel. Although its attacks are slow, they are nonetheless deadly. But what makes it a formidable opponent and a force to be reckoned with is the fact that it controls several beings of the woods, like wolves, neckers, and crows, to just name a few. To make things worse for you, they can also disappear and turn into smoke to avoid a constant array of attacks. Number 8. Brooksa. There are many vampires in the Witcher universe. Not all of them are intelligent or even tactical. Some of them are beasts who hunt almost anyone that comes before them without discrimination or thought. However, there are some types of vampires, like the higher vampires and the Brooksa, that are tactical enough and act quite intelligently, apart from having superhuman strength, speed, and powers. Brooksa is a powerful womanoid vampire with dark hair, but her real form is that of a huge bat with razor-sharp claws and bony fangs. Brooksa is one of the few vampire types that are immune to sunlight, and the only others are higher vampires, the Mulas and the Alps. They're extremely agile and fast. The only effective weapon against them are silver swords. In case a player doesn't possess a silver sword, they should be as quick and accurate as the Brooksa, or else the fight would end even before starting. Furthermore, they have the capacity to land sonic blows through a piercing scream that has the ability to even send the most mature men into the air. The power of this potent cry can knock almost anyone off the ground, but Quen is known to have survived it. When they have drunk the blood of humans, they start to sing a song in their native language. The sickening and shrill song has the ability to transform the dreams of men into nightmares. One should be on a constant vigil for the Brooksa, as they reside in places far away from the human population, and when one approaches the lair or their hunting grounds, one may hear several birds singing simultaneously. This is because the Brooksa share a close-knit relationship with birds. Fortunately for us, the Brooksa are rare creatures who prefer living in secluded areas. Even if they choose to live near the human population, they appear only after sunset and avoid crowds. Their strongest ability, however, is to become invisible. When combined with their other strengths, the invisibility makes Brooksa a formidable opponent. This makes them almost as ferocious and fierce as the higher vampires themselves. It is always wise to steer clear of their lairs, but if you ever wish to be the brave one, then keep a few moondust bombs handy, because they'll help you see the Brooksa when they become invisible. And of course, don't forget your silver sword. Once they are close enough to their prey, they sink their sharp claws and drink their blood of their weakened prey. One of the Brooksa is also known to have opened an orphanage, because that one liked the blood of young children. To avoid having your blood drunk by the Brooksa, it is wise to make use of the black blood potion.
We breathed our last.
Watch out!
If I don't survive this, you're to take whatever you want from the fortress.
Number 9. The Basilisk. The Basilisk is a semi-reptilian Dragonoid that terrifies people and entire communities. With their beaks, crimson dewlaps, hooked talons, and webbed wings, they become one of the most ferocious creatures can be compared to the likes of the Griffon. Some people believe that the Basilisk is the king of the Zerrikanian desert. However, they simply mistake it for the cockatrice. They believe that it is filled with hate and disgust for the living, and that its breath is poisonous while its gaze is deadly. However, this is a false claim, as the Basilisk are known to reproduce in dungeons and caves, just like many of its monster brethren. Also, contrary to popular and widely accepted belief, the Basilisk's gaze doesn't kill anyone, nor turn them into stone. But then, their acidic venom and sharp body parts, like their claws and teeth, are enough to kill anyone. They aren't nocturnal and wait patiently in damp, dark places to attack unsuspecting victims. by taking them by surprise. One important tip for players when facing the Basilisk is that they should drink the golden aureole beforehand, as it would grant protection against the Basilisk venom. Furthermore, keep the dancing star or shrapnel bombs handy, as they are known to work against the Basilisk. Number 10. Fiend. The Fiend is a relic that appears in The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. They resemble a deer that are enormously huge in comparison with regular deer. Also, they have a third eye, using which they can hypnotize their victims. These mountains of muscle live in wet and damp areas, like bogs, swamps, and thick forests. They possess heads that are filled with teeth, and the horns of a deer. Fiends are largely shy creatures that avoid confrontation with humans, but when a need arises, they don't shy away from unleashing their horrid wrath onto humans. These beasts have heightened regenerative capacities, meaning any wound that they sustain gets healed almost immediately. But what makes them really terrifying is their enormous size and their power that comes with it. One direct hit from their paws and consider yourself done for some time. If their sheer brute force was not menacing enough, they also have another refined and tactical weapon in the form of their third eye, placed at the center of their forehead, which they use to hypnotize their victims. When under fiend-induced hypnosis, the victim only sees a burning eye and nothing else, and naturally, it becomes the last thing that they ever see. The only weakness that these hulking beasts possess is their fear of loud noises. Therefore, it is imperative that you keep some samum or devil's puffball with you when encountering a fiend. They will help you at least walk away from the menace, if not ensure victory. These beasts are fairly fast, even for their hulking size. Number 11. The Wyvern. These flying beasts are largely Dragonoids, but it's better to call them a flying reptile because they only have 2 legs, while a Dragonoid has 4 to 6. They have long, snake-like necks, and their tails end in a highly poisonous trident. Like other flying monsters from the Witcher universe, the Wyvern also swoops down on its target from the air and lifts it off to carry it to its nest. These creatures don't at all discriminate about who their target is, and it can very well be human or animal, or even another smaller monster from the universe. Often it knocks down its prey with its huge and powerful wings before biting it with its heavily toothed beak. And lastly, it uses its poisonous stinger in the tail to finish off the prey. As we mentioned earlier that the golden aureole is quite helpful when taking care of the basilisk venom, it also helps in dealing with the poison oozing out of a wyvern tail. Furthermore, they can spit their victim on the targets with near perfection. Unlike other flying beasts, the wyvern immediately fly away from the range of crossbows, and then land back with bullet speed to attack and claw their poor victims. If the wyvern is on the ground, it will almost always prefer to attack with its sharp and powerful talons on its feet, and it may also use its tail to knock you off. However, when on the ground, the wyvern becomes vulnerable to damage, as it's not really adept to dodging and blocking. Relentless and quick attacks usually lead to victory.
Your children are plump as piglets, sweet as caramel. But now we must talk to our white-haired friend.
Number 12. Crones. Also called the Ladies of the Woods, the Crones are basically a triplet of witches residing in a swamp cabin. They are called Wispus, Weevis, and Brewis. According to the legends, these 3 are in fact the daughters of the original Lady of the Woods. They either communicate through an enchanted tapestry or with the help of a medium named Gran. These 3 are one of the most ancient creatures in the Witcher universe, and can be compared to the higher vampires themselves in terms of their antiquity.
Like she was our own daughter. Wasted affection. She proved a very naughty girl.
After Ciri had been transported to their swamp, they find her and take her into their cabin, where they discover that she possessed the Elder Blood. They initially wanted to eat Ciri, but after deliberating, they decided they'd only eat one of her limbs, and then hand her over to Imlerith, the general of the Wild Hunt. However, Ciri heard their plans and fled. Interestingly, the Crones take the ears of people as a usual mode of payment, because ears help them to keep an eye on and monitor the woods.
Happy seeing you, handsome knight.
Baba Yaga, or the Boogeyman, was clearly a strong inspiration behind the characterization of the crones. Also, 3 witches, or the 3 weird sisters, were seen in the first scene of Shakespeare's much celebrated play Macbeth, in which they define destiny. This is in resonance with what crones do in Velen. Number 13. Striga. Strigas are women who can transform into monsters after getting cursed. Her heart fills with hate for all human beings, and she loses her caring and motherly instincts. In fact, she devours anyone that stands before her, effectively becoming a cannibal. She comes out on full moon nights, hunt for prey, and resembles a typical werewolf in this regard. This beast has immense level of speed and strength, apart from having natural weapons like claws and sharp teeth. Interestingly, King Foltest would tie some criminals to the ground, and they would ultimately become a nice meal for Striga. Foltest's daughter Ada the White is the only well-known woman to have transformed into a Striga. The poor girl was cursed even before she took birth. Eventually, she was born as a Striga. Both she and her mother, who died at childbirth, were laid to rest in a single tomb, but the infant girl remained there for 7 years and grew inside the coffin. When she finally emerged, she was a creature with violent and hostile predatory instincts. Even if Striga's curse is lifted, there are still high chances that the woman may never fully recover, and would likely remain a dull-witted person and resemble the intelligence of her prior monstrous form. That's all for today's video. In our next episode, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For marvelous videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, and be safe.
The girl in the woods will be with you always.